The piano music stopped. Staff Sergeant Thomas Wright had been walking the East Wing corridor for the better part of an hour, and the Chopin had become background noise. Familiar, expected. Princess Charlotte practiced here most Tuesday afternoons, but it was 5:30 now, well past her usual lesson time, and something about the silence felt wrong. He paused mid-step, listened. The East Wing music room sat at the end of a corridor most visitors never saw. Tall ceilings, crown moulding from another century, heavy oak door with brass fixtures that gleamed even in dim light. Diana had practiced here decades ago. Now it belonged to Charlotte when her schedule allowed. Wright checked his watch again. 5:32. The room should have been empty by now. Locked. Protocol stated all East Wing practice rooms secured by 5 p.m. sharp. No exceptions. The music started again. Same piece. Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. But the notes came slower this time. Hesitant. A phrase. Repeated. Stopped. Started over. Wrong notes scattered through like cracks in glass. Wright moved closer to the door. 8 years of service had taught him to trust his instincts, and right now every instinct screamed that something wasn't right. The music stopped again. Abruptly, mid-phrase, a chord left hanging in the air, unresolved, then silence. Wright counted the seconds. 5, 10, 15. Then he heard it. Quiet, muffled, the kind of sound someone makes when they're trying very hard not to be heard. Crying. His hand moved to the door handle, turned, locked. The music room was never locked from the inside. Staff had master keys. Charlotte's instructor had a key, but the door didn't lock from within. Not unless someone deliberately engaged the manual bolt. Your Highness? Wright kept his voice calm, professional. Princess Charlotte, are you all right? Nothing. He tried again. Ma'am, this is Staff Sergeant Wright. I'm going to need you to open the door. Silence. Then a small voice, barely audible through the heavy oak. I'm fine. Please go away. She wasn't fine. Wright had 3 younger sisters. He knew what fine sounded like. This wasn't it. But before we continue, make sure you hit subscribe. Drop a comment below where you're watching from. Now, back to what happened next. Wright pressed his palm against the door. The wood was cold under his hand. Charlotte, I need to see that you're safe. Can you unlock the door for me? I said, I'm fine. Her voice cracked. Just leave me alone, please. Protocol said, call it in. Radio his superior. Let palace staff handle internal matters. But Protocol also said the music room should have been locked and empty 20 minutes ago. Protocol said a 9-year-old princess shouldn't be alone in a locked room, crying, refusing to come out. Wright pulled out his radio, clicked to the private channel. This is Wright, East Wing. I have a situation at the music room. The response came back. Immediately, Captain Wells. Define situation, Sergeant. Princess Charlotte is inside. Doors locked. She's in distress but refusing to open up. Static. Then, is she in immediate danger? Wright listened. The crying had stopped. Now just silence. Unknown, sir, but something's not right. Hold position. I'll send someone with a master key. How long? 15 minutes. Palace staff is in a security briefing. 15 minutes. Wright looked at the door. Felt the weight of his training against the weight of his gut. Copy that. He clicked off the radio, crouched down near the door. Charlotte, can you hear me? A pause. Then, yes. I'm going to stay right here, okay? You're not alone. No response. Wright settled his back against the wall opposite the door. From here he could see the entire corridor. Empty. The portraits on the walls watched him with painted eyes. Kings and queens from centuries past. He wondered if any of them had ever been 9 years old and crying alone in a locked room. Do you want to talk? He asked. You don't have to open the door. Just talk. Silence. I have 3 younger sisters, Wright continued. When they were upset, sometimes they just needed to know someone was listening. I'm listening now. The silence stretched. Wright counted his heartbeats. 60, 70, 80. Then her voice came through the door, small and tired. How old are your sisters? 16, 14, and 11. Do they play piano? The youngest one does. Not very well, but she tries. A sound that might have been a laugh, might have been a sob. I'm not very good either. That's not what I heard. The Chopin sounded beautiful. It was wrong. I kept making mistakes. Wright kept his voice gentle. Everyone makes mistakes. That's how we learn. Not princesses. The words came out bitter, small. Princesses are supposed to be perfect. Before Wright could respond, he heard footsteps. Click of heels on marble. Coming fast. A woman appeared at the end of the corridor. 50s. Severe bun. Tailored suit. Wright recognized her. Miss Victoria Hartwell. Charlotte's music instructor. Sergeant. Her voice was clipped. Professional. What are you doing here? Wright stood. The princess is inside. Doors locked. She's upset. I'm aware. Hartwell's expression didn't change. This is a private matter. I'll handle it. She won't open the door. Because you're frightening her. Hartwell moved past him. Knocked twice. Sharp. Precise. Charlotte, open this door immediately. Your lesson time is over. You need to return to your quarters. No response from inside. Hartwell knocked again. Harder. Charlotte Elizabeth Diana, this is completely inappropriate. Open this door right now. Wright watched the instructor's face, saw the flash of irritation, the tight set of her jaw. Something about her body language felt wrong. Too controlled, too deliberate. Perhaps if we... Sergeant, Hartwell turned to face him. This is not a security matter. This is a tantrum. I've dealt with this before. The princess sometimes gets emotional. When her performance doesn't meet standards, she'll come out when she's ready. How long has she been in there? Hartwell checked her watch. Her lesson ended at 4:30, so just over an hour. And you left her alone? I gave her space to compose herself. As I said, this isn't the first time. Hartwell's smile didn't reach her eyes. Young royals can be quite dramatic. Wright looked at the door, thought about the crying he'd heard. The way Charlotte's voice had cracked when she said she was fine. That wasn't drama. That was a child in distress. Miss Hartwell, with respect, I think we should... What you think, Sergeant, is irrelevant. Hartwell's voice hardened. Your security, not family, not staff. You have no authority here. Wright's training said, stand down. His gut said something else entirely. He thought opening the door would solve everything. What he found inside was just the beginning. The footsteps came again. Different rhythm this time, heavier. Captain Wells appeared, master key in hand. Sergeant Wright, report. Wright straightened. Princess Charlotte locked in the music room. Sir, approximately 1 hour. She's in distress, refusing to open the door. Wells looked at Hartwell. Miss Hartwell, what happened? A disagreement about practice standards, Captain. Nothing more. The princess is simply being stubborn. Charlotte, Wells called through the door. This is Captain Wells. I'm going to use the master key to open the door. All right? Silence. Wells inserted the key. Turned it. The lock clicked, but the door didn't open. It's bolted from inside, Wells said. He tried again. Nothing. Charlotte, you need to unlock the bolt. Can you do that for me? No response. Hartwell sighed. You see, she'll come out eventually. She always does. I suggest we leave her alone. But Wright was watching the gap under the door, had been watching it for the past few minutes. No movement, no shadows, no sign that Charlotte was anywhere near the door. When did you last see her? Wright asked Hartwell. I told you, 4:30. And you heard her in there after that? Hartwell's eyes narrowed. The door was locked. Obviously, she locked it herself. That's not what I asked. Wells held up a hand. Sergeant. Wright kept his eyes on Hartwell. Something wasn't adding up. The music had been playing when he arrived. But if Charlotte had been alone since 4:30, upset enough to lock herself in, would she really have been practicing Chopin? Wells tried the door again, called through it. Charlotte, if you can hear me, I need some sign that you're okay. Can you tap on the door? Anything? Silence. Wright's chest tightened. A locked room, a child who wouldn't respond, over an hour alone. Every second that passed made the silence heavier. We need to force the door, Wright said. Absolutely not, Hartwell stepped forward. This is absurd. She's a child having a tantrum, not a hostage situation. Then she can tell us that herself, once we see her. Wells looked between them, then at the door. Wright could see the calculation in his superior's eyes. Protocol versus instinct. Rules versus a child's safety. Captain Wells, Hartwell said carefully, I have the Princess Royal's full confidence in managing Charlotte's education. If you damage palace property over a child's mood, I will be reporting this directly to Her Royal Highness. The threat hung in the air. Princess Anne, second in line to the throne. Not someone whose bad side you wanted to find yourself on. But Wells was already pulling out his phone. I'm calling maintenance. We're opening that door. You're making a mistake. Then I'll own it. So Wells turned to Wright. Stay here. No one in or out until I get back. Wright nodded. Watched his captain disappear down the corridor. Watched Hartwell's face cycle through irritation, calculation, something that might have been worry. She's fine, Hartwell said again. But this time her voice had changed, less certain. She needs time. Time for what? Hartwell didn't answer. She pulled out her own phone, typed something quickly, put it away. I should inform the Princess Royal about this overreaction. You do that. Hartwell gave him a long look, then walked away. Her heels clicked against marble, echoing, fading. Wright was alone in the corridor again. He pressed his ear against the door, listened. No piano, no crying, no movement at all, just silence. The wrong kind of silence. He knocked, gentle. Charlotte, it's just me again. Sergeant Wright. Can you hear me? Nothing. I'm not going anywhere, okay? Whatever's wrong, we'll fix it. But I need to know you're all right. Still nothing. Wright's mind raced. A 9-year-old child. Locked room. No response. How long had she actually been in there? Hartwell said since 4:30. But Hartwell had also lied about hearing her after the lesson ended. Wright was certain of it. What if Charlotte wasn't ignoring them? What if she couldn't respond? He checked his watch. 5:48. Wells would be back with maintenance in 10 minutes. Maybe less. 10 minutes. Wright looked at the door. Heavy oak, original to the palace. Probably 200 years old. The brass fixtures alone were probably worth more than his annual salary. He thought about his sisters. Thought about what he'd want someone to do if one of them was behind a locked door. Not responding. Potentially in trouble. Protocol was clear. Wait for authorization. Wait for proper channels. Wait for someone else to make the decision. But Wright had learned a long time ago that sometimes waiting was the wrong choice. He stepped back, examined the door. The bolt was internal. Old mechanism. The door itself opened inward. He couldn't kick it in without risking injury to anyone on the other side. But the lock mechanism, if he could break that... Wright pulled out his tactical knife, slid the blade into the gap between door and frame, felt for the bolt mechanism. Nothing. The gap was too tight. Footsteps again. Fast. Wells appeared with 2 maintenance workers, One carried a toolbox, the other a crowbar. Maintenance says we can pop the bolt mechanism without damaging the door, Wells said, but it'll take a few minutes. The maintenance worker knelt by the door, started working on the lock plate, unscrewing, prying. Wright stepped back, gave them room, but his eyes never left the door. 2 minutes passed. 3. The mechanism came loose. The worker slid something thin into the gap, worked the bolt. Click. The door swung open. The room was dim. Evening light filtered through tall windows, casting long shadows across hardwood floors. The grand piano sat in the center, lid half closed, music sheets scattered across its surface. And there, on the piano bench, sat Princess Charlotte. She looked up when the door opened. Small, young, her school uniform was wrinkled, hair pulled back in a ponytail that had come half loose. Tear tracks visible on her cheeks, even in the fading light, but it was her eyes that stopped Wright cold. Not defiant, not angry, just empty, like something inside her had simply given up. Charlotte. Wells stepped inside first, kept his voice calm. Are you hurt? She shook her head. Small movement, mechanical. Can you tell us what happened? She looked down at the piano keys. Her fingers rested there, not playing, just touching. I locked the door. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. Wells moved closer. Wright stayed in the doorway, watching, taking in details. The music sheets weren't just scattered, they were torn. Small rips along the edges. One lay on the floor, crumpled. The Chopin Nocturne. Someone had written on it in red ink. Corrections. Sharp, angry marks that cut across the notes. How long have you been in here? Wells asked. Charlotte's shoulders lifted in a shrug. I don't know. A while. Since your lesson ended? Yes. That was over an hour ago. I know. Wells crouched down, eye level with her. Charlotte, I need you to tell me the truth. Did someone hurt you? Her head snapped up. No, no one hurt me. Did someone say something that upset you? Her eyes flickered, just for a second. Then she looked away. I'm fine, really. I just needed to be alone. Wright stepped into the room, his boots quiet on the wood floor. He could see more now. A water glass on the window ledge, empty. Charlotte's school bag by the wall, contents spilled out. Books, pencils, a small stuffed rabbit, well loved, sitting on top. And there, barely visible unless you were looking for it, fresh scratches on the doorframe, near the handle. Small, deliberate. Like someone had been trying to open a locked door from the outside. Did someone try to get in? Wright asked. After you locked the door? Charlotte's hands stilled on the piano keys. What? The door frame. Someone tried to force it. I don't know. Maybe. Maybe? She stood up suddenly. I need to go. My mum will be wondering where I am. Charlotte. Wells stood as well. We're not trying to get you in trouble. We just want to understand what happened. Nothing happened. I was practicing. I got frustrated. I locked the door because I wanted to be alone. That's all. Her voice was steady now, rehearsed, like she'd prepared these exact words. May I please? Be excused. Wells looked at Wright. Wright could see the same doubt in his captain's eyes. This wasn't right. None of it was right. But they couldn't force a 9-year-old princess to talk. All right, Wells said carefully. Let me call your protection officer. They'll escort you back to your quarters. I can walk myself. Protocol, Your Highness. You know that. Charlotte's face tightened, but she nodded, moved to collect her bag. Wright watched her, the way she moved too carefully, like every gesture was controlled, the way she avoided looking at the music sheets, the way her hand trembled slightly when she picked up the stuffed rabbit. He didn't know it yet, but what Charlotte wasn't saying would change everything. Not just for her, for the entire palace. Wells stepped into the hallway to make the call. Wright stayed with Charlotte. She stood by the window now, looking out at the gardens below. That nocturne you were playing, Wright said quietly. It's beautiful, even with the mistakes. It wasn't good enough. Says who? Charlotte didn't answer. Wright moved closer. Not too close. Just enough that she knew he was there. You know, my youngest sister used to cry after her piano lesson sometimes. Charlotte glanced at him. Why? Her teacher was very strict, very focused on perfection, made her feel like every mistake was failure. Wright kept his voice conversational. Took her 2 years to realize the problem wasn't her playing. It was the teacher. Charlotte turned back to the window. I have the best instructors. My family makes sure of it. Best doesn't always mean right. Miss Hartwell has taught royalty for 20 years. She taught my mother. And how does she teach you? Silence. Wright looked at the music sheet on the floor, the angry red corrections. Those marks on your sheet. Did Miss Hartwell write those? They're corrections. I needed them. Did you? Charlotte's hand tightened on the stuffed rabbit. I made mistakes. Every measure. She was just trying to help me improve. By tearing your music? I tore it when I got frustrated. Wright looked at the sheet again. The tears were too clean, too deliberate, not the jagged rips of a child's frustration. Charlotte, please stop. Her voice cracked. I just want to go to my room. Wright backed off, nodded. Okay. Wells returned. Officer Bennett is on her way. 2 minutes. They stood in silence. Wright used the time to study the room more carefully. Charlotte's music bag had fallen in a way that suggested it had been thrown, not dropped. The chair by the door was positioned oddly, like someone had shoved it aside quickly. And the piano itself. Wright moved closer, pretended to examine the instrument, but what he was really looking at was the piano bench. The velvet cushion showed clear impressions, one where Charlotte had been sitting, but another, larger impression. Someone else had sat there recently. Officer Bennett arrived, young, professional. She gave Charlotte a warm smile. Your Highness, ready to head back? Charlotte nodded, moved toward the door. Charlotte, Wells said, if you want to talk later, about anything, you know where to find us. She paused, looked back at him. For just a second, Wright saw something in her expression. Not emptiness, fear. Real fear, quickly hidden. Thank you, Captain, but there's nothing to talk about. She left. Bennett followed. Their footsteps faded down the corridor. Wells turned to Wright. Your assessment? Something happened in this room. Something more than a frustrated practice session. I agree. But without her cooperation... Wells trailed off. We can't investigate a situation if the principal refuses to confirm there is one. Someone tried to force that door open from the outside. Could have been Hartwell, when Charlotte locked her in. Why would Charlotte lock her instructor in? Wells didn't answer. He moved around the room, took in the same details Wright had noticed. The torn sheet, the scattered bag, the scratches on the door frame. We'll report it, Wells said finally. Document everything. Photos of the room, the torn music, the door. If there's a pattern of behavior from Hartwell, this goes on record. And Charlotte? She's with her protection officer. Safe. That's all we can do for now. Wright knew he was right, knew that pushing harder would cross lines they couldn't cross. But everything in him resisted walking away. Wells pulled out his phone, started photographing the room, the music sheets, the door, frame, the scattered belongings. Wright moved to the window, looked out at the same view Charlotte had been staring at. The gardens were beautiful in the evening light, perfectly maintained, perfectly controlled, like everything else in the palace. Sergeant. Wells was looking at something on the piano. Come here. Wright crossed the room. Wells pointed to a small leather-bound book, tucked partially under the music sheets. A journal, Charlotte's name embossed on the cover. Should we? Wright asked. No, it's private. But Wells used his pen to flip open the cover. Just the first page, not reading, just looking. The handwriting was child's neat, careful letters in blue ink, but the first entry visible made Wright's chest tighten. I have to do better. I have to be perfect. If I'm not perfect, I don't deserve... The sentence cut off, unfinished. Wells closed the journal, didn't touch it again. That stays here. We document that it exists, but we don't read it. Captain, no, Wright. We have our limits. That's hers. Wright understood, respected it, but the unfinished sentence stayed with him. Don't deserve what? Love? Respect? To be a princess? What had someone made this 9-year-old child believe about herself? They finished documenting the room. Wells called the head of palace security, gave a brief report. Wright could hear the response through the phone. Vague, non-committal. They'd look into it. Translation. They'd do nothing unless something else happened. Wells ended the call. We're done here. Lock it up. Wright took one last look around the room. Something still bothered him. Something he couldn't quite place. Then he saw it, on the window ledge next to the empty water glass. Small white fibers, like fabric. He moved closer, touched one with his finger. Lace. Delicate, expensive, not from Charlotte's school uniform. He thought about the larger impression on the piano bench, about someone else being in this room recently. Captain, Wells came, over, looked at the fibers. His expression darkened. Bag it. Wright pulled out an evidence bag from his kit, carefully collected the fibers, labelled it, dated it, signed it. They locked the music room. Wells pocketed the key. This stays between us until we know more. Understood? Yes, sir. They walked back through the east wing. The corridors felt different now, darker. Every closed door suddenly felt like it might be hiding something. Wright checked his watch. 6:15. Shift change in 45 minutes. He should write his report, file the paperwork, move on to the next task. But he couldn't shake the image of Charlotte sitting at that piano, small and alone, trying so hard to be perfect, trying so hard to meet impossible standards. And that unfinished sentence. I don't deserve... What Charlotte revealed next changed everything about this situation. But first, if you're enjoying this story, drop a like and let us know in the comments. Have you ever felt completely alone in a crowded place? Now here's what the guard discovered next. Wright's phone buzzed. Text message, unknown number. He opened it. Meet me in the East Garden. 20 minutes. Come alone. See. Charlotte. Wright showed Wells. His captain's jaw tightened. Could be anyone. Could be her. If it is, she has her protection officer. She doesn't need... She reached out to me specifically. From a phone she shouldn't have access to during personal time. Wells studied the message. If you go, I'm back up. 50 meters out. You're not meeting her alone regardless of what the message says. Agreed. They had 15 minutes. Wright used them to review the photos Wells had taken. The room, the music, the journal, the evidence slowly building a picture he didn't like. A child under too much pressure. An instructor who demanded perfection. A locked room and hours of silence. And now, a secret meeting. Wright's gut told him this was bigger than a difficult music lesson. Told him Charlotte had locked that door for a reason. Had stayed in that room for over an hour for a reason. Had refused to talk for a reason. The question was, what was she so afraid of? 14 minutes later, Wright walked through the palace corridors toward the East Garden. Evening had fully arrived. Lights glowed in windows. Staff moved through hallways with quiet efficiency. Everything looked normal, peaceful, controlled. But Wright had served in enough places to know that surface calm often hid deeper chaos. The East Garden was small, private. Hedges and flower beds arranged in geometric patterns, a fountain in the center, water trickling over stone. And there, sitting on a bench near the fountain, was Princess Charlotte. She looked up when Wright approached. Her protection officer, Bennett, stood 20 meters away, close enough to intervene, far enough to give privacy. Charlotte gestured to the bench beside her. Wright sat, kept space between them. Professional distance. "How did you get this, number?" Wright asked quietly. "Officer Bennett, I asked her to text you. She thinks I'm giving you my mother's thanks for helping earlier." "And are you?" Charlotte looked at the fountain. "No." Wright waited. Years of experience had taught him that silence was often more effective than questions. "I need to tell you something," Charlotte said finally. "But you can't tell anyone it came from me." "Charlotte, please." She looked at him now. 9 years old, but her eyes were older. Tired. "If they know I talked, it'll get worse." Wright's chest tightened. What gets worse?" She turned back to the fountain, her hands twisted together in her lap. "The lessons, with Miss Hartwell. Tell me what happened today. I made mistakes. I always make mistakes." She gets frustrated. "How frustrated?" Charlotte didn't answer right away. When she spoke again, her voice was smaller. "She says things about how I'm wasting her time, how I'm not as talented as my mother, how maybe I should give up music entirely if I can't even master a simple nocturne." Wright felt anger building in his chest, kept it controlled. "Is that all she does? Say things?" Mostly. Mostly." Charlotte's hands stilled. "Sometimes she corrects my posture. When I'm playing wrong, she grabs my shoulders, positions my hands. It hurts sometimes. But she says it's necessary, that I'll never learn proper technique if she's gentle." Wright thought about the lace fibers on the window ledge. "Was Miss Hartwell wearing white lace today?" Charlotte looked surprised. "Her blouse. It has lace at the collar. Why?" "Just checking details." Wright kept his voice neutral. "Tell me about locking the door." "She left at 4:30, said I should stay and practice until I could play the piece perfectly. All the way through, no mistakes." Charlotte's voice wavered. "She said not to leave until I got it right." "So you locked the door?" "After she left?" "Yes." Charlotte looked down. "I didn't want her to come back and find me still making mistakes." "How long did you practice?" "I don't know. A long time. But I couldn't get it right. Every time I tried, I made more mistakes. And I kept thinking about what she said. About disappointing everyone. About not being good enough." Wright watched her face. Saw the weight she carried. 9 years old and already crushed by impossible expectations. "Charlotte, did Miss Hartwell ever do anything more than grab your shoulders?" "Like what? Did she ever hit you? Shake you? Anything physical beyond positioning correction?" Charlotte hesitated. Too long. No. She was lying. Wright was certain. But he couldn't push. Not here. Not yet. "Today," Wright said carefully. "When we opened the door, you looked scared." "I was embarrassed. I'd locked myself in. I couldn't get the music right. I knew I'd be in trouble." "Scared and embarrassed aren't the same thing." Charlotte stood suddenly. "I need to go. I shouldn't have contacted you." Wright stood as well. "Charlotte, if someone is hurting you..." "No one is hurting me. I'm a princess. I have the best of everything. The best teachers, the best protection, the best life anyone could want." Her voice was brittle, ready to crack. "I'm just not good enough to deserve it." And there it was. The unfinished sentence from her journal, completed. "I don't deserve this life." "That's not true," Wright said firmly. "You're a child. You're allowed to make mistakes. You're allowed to struggle with difficult music. That doesn't make you unworthy." Tears filled Charlotte's eyes. She blinked them back. "You don't understand. You're not royal. You don't know what it's like." "You're right. I don't. But I know what abuse looks like, and I know the difference between high standards and cruelty. Charlotte's face went pale. I never said, you didn't have to. They stood in silence. The fountain trickled. Somewhere in the distance, a door closed. If I tell, Charlotte whispered, they'll say I'm lying, or exaggerating, or being dramatic. Miss Hartwell is respected, trusted. She's taught royalty for 20 years. Who would believe me over her? Wright crouched down, eye level with her again. I believe you. Charlotte's breath caught, like she hadn't expected those words, like she'd never heard them before. I need you to do something for me, Wright said. I need you to tell your mother, or your father, what's really happening in those lessons. I can't. Why not? Because… Charlotte's voice broke. Because what if they already know? What if this is just what being a princess means? What if everyone thinks this is normal, and I'm the one who's wrong for not handling it? Before Wright could respond, Officer Bennett approached. Your Highness, it's time to return inside. Your mother is asking for you. Charlotte wiped her eyes quickly, composed herself. The transformation was instant. Shoulders back, face neutral, every trace of vulnerability gone. Thank you for your time. Sergeant Wright, she said, formally. Perfectly, like they'd been discussing nothing more important than the weather. Then she walked away. Bennett beside her, a 9-year-old child who'd learned to hide her pain so well that most people would never see it. But Wright had seen it, and he wasn't going to unsee it. Wright found Captain Wells in the security office. 10 p.m. Most of the palace was quiet. Wells looked up from his computer when Wright entered. How did it go? Wright closed the door, told him everything. Charlotte's confession about Hartwell's treatment, the harsh words, the physical corrections that hurt, the hours of forced practice, the crushing pressure to be perfect. And most damning, Charlotte's belief that maybe this was normal. Maybe she deserved it. Wells listened without interrupting. When Wright finished, his captain sat back in his chair, rubbed his face with both hands. This is bigger than we thought. Yes, sir. We need evidence, real evidence. Not just a child's word against a respected instructor's. The lace fibers prove someone was in the room, not that they hurt anyone. Wells pulled up files on his computer. I've been digging into Hartwell's history. 23 years teaching royal children. Impeccable references. 3 commendations from the Royal Academy of Music. Any complaints? None on record. Wells clicked through more files. But that doesn't mean there haven't been any, just means they were never formal. Wright thought about Charlotte's question. What if they already know? What if this is normal? We need to talk to other students, Wright said. Past students. Find out if there's a pattern. That's not our jurisdiction. We're security, not internal affairs. So we just let it continue? I didn't say that. Wells closed his laptop. But we need to be smart about this. Hartwell has powerful connections. Princess Anne personally recommended her for Charlotte's instruction. If we make accusations without solid proof, we'll be the ones removed from duty. Wright knew he was right, knew that rank and reputation mattered in this world, but knowing it didn't make it easier to accept. What do you suggest? Wells was quiet for a moment. We document everything. Every interaction we can verify. We find witnesses. We build a case that's so solid, no one can dismiss it. That takes time. Yes. And meanwhile, Charlotte has another lesson scheduled. When? Wells checked the palace schedule. Thursday, 2 days from now. 2 days. 48 hours for Charlotte to dread what was coming. To practice until her hands hurt. To prepare herself for more criticism, more physical corrections. More hours of being told she wasn't good enough. Wright's phone buzzed. Text message. Wells, this time, from his personal phone. Meet me outside. 5 minutes. Don't tell anyone. Wright looked up. Wells was typing on his phone, not looking at Wright, his expression carefully neutral. Something was happening. Wright waited exactly 5 minutes, then left the security office, walked through corridors he knew weren't monitored, went out through a service entrance most guards didn't use. Wells was there, smoking a cigarette. He only smoked when things were bad. "I lied in there," Wells said without preamble, "about the complaints." Wright went still. "Sir?" "There was one, 3 years ago. Different student. Viscount's daughter, 7 years old. Parents complained that Hartwell was too harsh, said their daughter was having nightmares, refusing to practice." "What happened?" "Complaint was investigated by Palace Education Oversight. Hartwell was interviewed. The girl was interviewed. Hartwell claimed the child was simply unwilling to put in the work. Made it sound like the parents were coddling her, making excuses for laziness. And they believed her? They didn't have evidence either way, so they accepted Hartwell's version. The family quietly withdrew their daughter from lessons. Moved to France 6 months later. Wright felt sick. "Why didn't you tell me this inside?" "Because that office is monitored. Everything we say goes on record. And if someone in administration is protecting Hartwell, I need to know who before we play our hand." Wells took a long drag. "I pulled the old complaint file from archived records. Off the books. No one knows I have it." "Is it enough?" "It's a pattern. 1 complaint is an anomaly. 2 is suspicious. But we need more." "The girl in France. Can we contact her?" "I already did. Left a message with her parents. Explained I was following up on historical palace matters. Didn't mention Hartwell by name." Wells flicked ash. "If they call back, we'll know something was really wrong. If they don't," he shrugged, "people move on. They forget. Or they're too scared to remember," Wright thought. They stood in silence. The night air was cold, November settling in. Somewhere in the distance, an owl called. "There's something else," Wells said. "I pulled security footage from the East Wing. Today, around the time Charlotte's lesson ended. And Hartwell left the music room at 4:32, exactly when she said, but she came back at 4:48, stayed for 6 minutes, then left again." Wright's pulse quickened. "Did Charlotte let her in?" "Don't know. The angle doesn't show the door, just the hallway. But Hartwell was carrying something when she left the second time. Couldn't see what." Charlotte's journal, Wright thought, or the torn music sheets, evidence being removed. "We need that footage secured." "Already done. Backed up to 3 separate locations. Time-stamped. Sealed." Wells dropped his cigarette, ground it out. "But here's the problem. Footage shows she returned. Doesn't show what happened inside. Could have been innocent. Could have been her realizing she forgot something. Or she came back to make sure Charlotte stayed quiet." They looked at each other, both thinking the same thing. This was bigger than harsh teaching methods. This was psychological manipulation, control, making a child so afraid that she'd lock herself in a room and cry alone rather than ask for help. Wright's phone rang, unknown number. He answered. "Sergeant Wright." A woman's voice. Older, refined accent. French. "Speaking. My name is Duchess Marguerite Beaumont. Your captain left a message regarding my daughter, Isabel. I believe you're calling about Victoria Hartwell." Wright's eyes met Wells. "Yes, ma'am." "Then we need to talk. What that woman did to my child." Her voice cracked. "I should have spoken up 3 years ago. I didn't. I won't make that mistake again." 15 minutes later, Wright was in Wells's car, driving to a secure location off Palace grounds. The Duchess had refused to talk over the phone, said she had documents, evidence she'd collected but never submitted. Because when she tried to file a formal complaint, someone in the palace administration had advised her that pursuing it would be inadvisable for everyone involved. Translation: shut up and go away. They met in a private room at a hotel in Westminster. The Duchess was 60, elegant, composed, but her hands shook when she opened her briefcase. "Isabel was 6 when we hired Miss Hartwell," she said. "She loved music, loved the piano, used to practice for hours because she enjoyed it." The Duchess pulled out a folder. After 3 months with Hartwell, she stopped practicing entirely, started having nightmares, would cry if we even mentioned the piano. She handed them the folder. Inside were notes, diary entries in a child's handwriting, drawings of a woman with an angry face, and photographs. Wright's stomach dropped. The photographs showed a 7-year-old girl's arms, bruises, small, round, finger-shaped. "From positioning corrections," the Duchess said bitterly. That's what Hartwell called them. Teaching proper posture, proper hand placement. She'd grab Isabel's arms, her shoulders, hard, enough to leave marks. Wells documented everything with his phone. "Did you report this to police?" "I tried. They said it was a civil matter, educational discipline, not criminal assault. Suggested I handle it through the palace administration." The Duchess's voice hardened. "So I did. And the palace protected her, protected their prestigious instructor over my daughter." "Why?" Wright asked. "Why would they protect someone who hurts children?" "Because admitting they hired an abuser means admitting failure, means scandal, means questions about oversight and vetting and how this could happen in the royal household." She looked at them both. "It's easier to discredit one family than to acknowledge systemic problems." The silence in the room was heavy. "Is Isabel willing to make a statement?" Wells asked. "She's 10 now, in therapy, finally starting to enjoy music again. I won't put her through more trauma unless absolutely necessary." The Duchess closed her briefcase. "But these documents are yours. Use them. Stop Hartwell before she destroys another child." They left an hour later, Wright's mind racing. They had evidence now. Pattern of behavior, physical proof, a credible witness willing to testify if needed. But they still had one problem. Charlotte was still under Hartwell's instruction, still scheduled for another lesson in 36 hours. Still trapped in a system that valued reputation over her well-being. Wells drove in silence. Then, "We need to go over their heads." "To who?" "Princess Catherine, Charlotte's mother. She needs to know what's happening." "And if the administration blocks us?" "Then we make noise until someone listens." Wells pulled into the palace grounds, showed his credentials, parked. "Tomorrow morning, first thing, we request a meeting with the Princess of Wales. Formal, on record. We present everything we have." Wright nodded, but something still bothered him. "What if we're wrong about the administration protecting Hartwell? What if they just didn't know?" "Then they'll be grateful we brought it to their attention. Either way, this ends." They separated. Wright returned to his quarters. Should have slept, couldn't. He kept seeing Charlotte's face, that moment of hope when he'd said he believed her. Like those words were something she'd been waiting her whole life to hear. He pulled out his phone, scrolled through the photos Wells had shared from the Duchess, the bruises, the diary entries. One entry stopped him cold. "Miss Hartwell says I'm special, that she only pushes me because I have potential. She says if I just try harder, I could be great. But I'm not great. I'm not even good. Maybe she's wrong about me. Maybe I'm just pretending to be special, and everyone will figure it out." 7 years old, already convinced that abuse was love, that cruelty was care, that pain was proof she mattered, just like Charlotte. Wright thought about what would happen tomorrow, the meeting with Catherine, the evidence presented, the investigation that would follow, and he thought about what Charlotte had asked him. Who would believe me over her? Tomorrow Charlotte would have her answer. Wright's phone buzzed. Text message. Charlotte again. "She knows I talk to you. Please be careful." His blood went cold. How did Hartwell know? Another message. She has friends in security. She knows everything. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said anything. Wright immediately called Wells. Hartwell knows. Someone tipped her off. Then we move now. Tonight. Wells's voice was hard. I'll contact Princess Catherine's private secretary. Emergency meeting. Get your evidence ready. Wright gathered everything. The photos from today's music room, the timeline, the security footage showing Hartwell's return, the Duchess's documents. All of it organized, annotated, irrefutable. We're approaching the moment that changed palace protocol forever. If you haven't subscribed, do it now. We share stories like this daily. Here's what happened when the truth finally came out. At 11:45 p.m., Wright and Wells stood outside Princess Catherine's private office. They'd been granted a meeting, immediate, no explanation given. The door opened. Catherine stood there, still in evening dress from some formal event, but her expression was all business. Gentlemen, you have 5 minutes to explain why this couldn't wait until morning. They stepped inside. Wells presented the evidence. Methodical, professional. The complaint from 3 years ago, the Duchess's testimony, the photographs of bruises, the security footage from today. Catherine's face remained composed throughout. But Wright saw the moment she understood, saw the flash of protective fury that every parent knows when they realize their child has been hurt. Charlotte's been with Miss Hartwell for 8 months, Catherine said quietly. 8 months, and no one noticed? Your Highness, with respect, Charlotte has been hiding it. She's been taught to hide it. Wright pulled out his phone, showed her Charlotte's text messages. She thinks this is normal, that she deserves it. Catherine read the messages. Her jaw tightened. Where is my daughter now? In her quarters, asleep. Her protection officer confirmed she's safe. And Miss Hartwell? Left the palace at 7 p.m., scheduled to return Thursday for Charlotte's next lesson. Catherine stood, moved to her desk, picked up her phone. There won't be a Thursday lesson. She made 3 calls, each brief, precise, authoritative. First, to her husband. William, I need you home, now. It's about Charlotte. Second, to palace security. I want Victoria Hartwell's access credentials revoked. Effective immediately. She is not to set foot in this palace until further notice. Third, to the head of palace administration. My office, 6 a.m. Bring Charlotte's full educational file and every document related to Victoria Hartwell's employment. And if I find out, someone knew about this and didn't tell me. She let the threat hang. Catherine ended the calls, looked at Wright and Wells. Thank you, both of you, for seeing what others missed, for believing a 9-year-old child over institutional reputation. Your Highness, Wells began, you took a risk bringing this to me directly. Breaking protocol, going over heads. Catherine's expression softened slightly. That took courage. Charlotte is lucky someone cared enough to break the rules for her. Wright thought about Charlotte in that music room. Alone, crying, convinced she deserved the treatment she'd received. She asked me who would believe her, Wright said. I need her to know the answer. Catherine nodded. She will. First thing tomorrow. I'll tell her myself. They were dismissed, walked back through midnight corridors. The palace felt different now, less pristine, less perfect, like someone had lifted a corner of expensive carpet and shown the dirt underneath. We did it, Wells said. It's over. But Wright knew better. This was just beginning. The investigation, the questions, the fallout when other families came forward, because they would come forward. Once one person spoke up, others always followed. His phone buzzed. Charlotte. Thank you. 2 words, but they carried the weight of 8 months of suffering. 8 months of believing she was the problem. 8 months of thinking she had to be perfect to deserve basic kindness. Wright texted back. You were brave to tell the truth. Never forget that. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then, will you be there tomorrow? When I talk to my mum? Wright looked at Wells. His captain nodded. I'll be there, Wright typed. I promise. Because in 24 hours, palace staff would be escorted from the premises. Policies would be rewritten. Oversight would be implemented. But right now, a 9-year-old girl just needed to know she wasn't alone. And that someone believed her. The truth was finally coming out. And this time, no one was going to stop it. Wright didn't sleep that night. At 5:30 a.m., he was already in his uniform. Pressed, professional, ready. At 6:15, his phone rang. Catherine's private secretary. Sergeant Wright, Princess Catherine requests your presence. Her private sitting room, 7 a.m. I'll be there. Wright arrived 5 minutes early. Wells accompanied him. They were shown into a comfortable room. Morning light filtered through curtains. Nothing formal, nothing intimidating. Charlotte sat on a sofa, still in pajamas, hair unbrushed. Catherine beside her, one arm around her daughter's shoulders. William stood by the window, his face carefully controlled, but his eyes dark with barely contained anger. Wright and Wells entered, stood at attention. At ease, William said quietly. This isn't a formal meeting. This is a conversation. Charlotte looked up at Wright. Her eyes were red. She'd been crying, but there was something different in her expression now. Not fear, relief. Charlotte has something she wants to say, Catherine said gently. Take your time, sweetheart. Charlotte took a breath. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. About Miss Hartwell. About the lessons. You have nothing to apologize for, William said firmly. He moved to sit on Charlotte's other side. Nothing that happened was your fault. Do you understand that? Charlotte nodded. But Wright could see she didn't quite believe it. Yet. Years of manipulation didn't disappear in one night. Can you tell us what's happened? Catherine asked. In your own words. Everything. Charlotte looked at Wright. He gave her a small nod. You can do this. She began talking, slowly at first, then faster. 8 months of stored pain pouring out. The first lesson, when Hartwell had seemed kind, professional. But by the 3rd week, the criticism had started. Small things. Charlotte's posture, her hand position, the way she held her shoulders. She said I had bad habits, that whoever taught me before her had done it wrong, that we needed to fix everything. The corrections had started gentle, verbal instructions. But when Charlotte didn't improve fast enough, Hartwell had started positioning her manually, grabbing her shoulders, pressing down hard, forcing her wrists into proper position. It hurt, but she said it was supposed to hurt. That real learning required discipline, that if I couldn't handle a little discomfort, I'd never be a real musician. Charlotte's voice wavered, but she kept going. The hours of forced practice. The torn music sheets when Charlotte's playing wasn't perfect. The harsh words that cut deeper than any physical pain. She said I was wasting her time, that she'd taught royalty for 20 years, and I was the worst student she'd ever had. That maybe I should quit music entirely because I was embarrassing my family. Catherine's grip tightened on Charlotte's shoulder. William's jaw clenched, but they let her finish. Last week was bad. I was preparing for the Christmas concert. She wanted me to play Chopin's Nocturne. I couldn't get it right. I practiced for hours, but I kept making mistakes. She got so frustrated Charlotte stopped, swallowed hard. She grabbed my wrists, really hard, said if I couldn't feel where my hands were supposed to be, she'd make me feel it. Wright saw Catherine's composure crack. Just for a second, a mother's rage breaking through royal training. Show me, Catherine said quietly. Charlotte pushed up her pajama sleeves. Faint bruises marked both wrists. Days old, fading, but unmistakable. William stood abruptly, walked to the window, didn't trust himself to speak, Yesterday, Charlotte continued, I thought if I just practiced more, if I could play it perfectly, she'd stop being disappointed. So after she left, I locked the door. I didn't want anyone to see me keep failing. You weren't failing, Wright said. First time he'd spoken. You were being abused. There's a difference. Charlotte looked at him. But I made so many mistakes. You're 9 years old. You're supposed to make mistakes. That's how children learn. That's how everyone learns. Wright kept his voice gentle but firm. What Miss Hartwell did wasn't teaching. It was cruelty. Silence filled the room. Catherine was crying quietly, not hiding it, just letting tears fall while she held her daughter. Why didn't you tell us? William asked. Turned from the window. His voice broke. Charlotte, why didn't you come to us? Because... Charlotte's voice was so small. Because I thought maybe it was normal. Maybe all royal children go through this. Maybe I was just weak for not handling it better. Catherine pulled Charlotte close. No, no, sweetheart. This is not normal. This is not acceptable. And you are not weak. You are brave. So incredibly brave for telling the truth. Wright watched Charlotte start to cry. Real crying this time. Not the silent tears of someone trying to hide. The sobbing release of a child who'd been holding everything in for too long. Catherine just held her, rocked her gently, let her cry. William looked at Wright and Wells. Tell me everything you found. They presented it all. The Duchess's testimony, the photographs, the pattern of behavior, the security footage, the complaint from 3 years ago that had been buried. With each piece of evidence, William's expression grew darker. Someone in administration knew, he said. Someone knew there was a prior complaint and still kept her employed, still assigned her to our daughter. We're investigating who, Wells said. But yes, sir, someone knew. The final moments of this story are unforgettable. Stay with us until the end. Now here's what happened next. By 9 a.m., Victoria Hartwell had been officially terminated. Not just from Charlotte's instruction, from the palace entirely. Her credentials revoked, her access denied. 23 years of employment ended in a single phone call. She tried to fight it, threatened legal action, threatened to go to the press with claims of unfair dismissal. Then Catherine's lawyers presented her with the evidence, the photographs, the testimonies, the security footage, and a simple message: leave quietly or face criminal charges. Hartwell left quietly. By 10 a.m., 3 more families had come forward, former students. Children who'd endured similar treatment but never reported it. Parents who'd been told to stay silent for the good of the institution. One mother brought medical records, her daughter's anxiety disorder, diagnosed after 6 months with Hartwell. The child had stopped speaking for 3 weeks, had nightmares about piano lessons for years. Another father brought recordings. He'd secretly recorded a lesson after his son came home with bruises. Hartwell's voice on the tape was cold, cutting, telling an 8-year-old boy he was pathetic and useless and would never amount to anything. The evidence mounted. The pattern became undeniable. By noon, the palace had launched a formal investigation, not just into Hartwell, into the entire educational oversight system. How had this happened? How had someone abused children for years while administrators looked away? The head of educational services resigned. 2 others were suspended pending investigation. Wright spent the day giving statements, documenting timelines, answering questions from investigators who'd finally been forced to care. At 3 p.m., he was called back to Catherine's office. She was alone this time. No staff, no formality, just a mother who needed to say something. Charlotte asked me to thank you, Catherine said. She wanted to do it herself, but... She gestured vaguely. The investigators have been interviewing her for hours. She's exhausted. How is she? Scared, relieved, confused, all of it at once. Catherine moved to the window, looked out at the gardens. She keeps asking if she's in trouble, if we're angry at her for not being good enough at piano. Wright's chest tightened. And what do you tell her? That the only person in trouble is the adult who hurt her. That she never has to touch a piano again if she doesn't want to. That we love her exactly as she is. Catherine turned back to face him. But I don't think she believes it yet. Not really. That kind of damage takes time to heal. She'll get there, with support. We've arranged therapy, the best child psychologist in London, someone who specializes in this type of trauma. Catherine's voice hardened. And we're reviewing every single instructor, tutor, and staff member who has contact with our children. This never happens again. Wright nodded. Good. You broke protocol yesterday, coming to me directly, going around the chain of command. Yes, ma'am. You could have been dismissed for it, lost your position, your reputation. I know. Catherine studied him. Why did you risk it? Wright thought about Charlotte in that music room, thought about his sisters, thought about every child who'd ever been hurt by someone who was supposed to teach them. Because she needed someone to believe her more than I needed to follow rules. Catherine's expression softened. Captain Wells tells me you have an exemplary record. 8 years of service, multiple commendations. He says you're the kind of guard he'd trust with his own children. Captain Wells is generous. Captain Wells is accurate. Catherine pulled an envelope from her desk. This is a formal commendation for exceptional service and dedication to duty. It goes in your permanent file, and when you apply for your next promotion, I'll be writing a personal recommendation. Wright took the envelope. Thank you, Your Highness. No, thank you, for seeing what others missed, for caring enough to act, for giving my daughter her voice back. She dismissed him. Wright left, feeling something he hadn't felt in 8 years of royal service, like he'd actually made a difference, like the uniform meant something beyond ceremony and tradition. He'd protected someone who needed protecting. That's what guards were supposed to do. The days that followed brought changes, swift, comprehensive, non-negotiable. New policies implemented. All educational staff now required background checks, regular psychological evaluations, mandatory reporting of any concerning behavior, and most importantly, direct access for children to report problems without going through administrators who might bury them. Charlotte's music education was restructured. New instructor, female, young, someone who understood that children needed encouragement, not cruelty. The lessons were shorter, more flexible, focused on enjoyment rather than perfection. Wright saw Charlotte 3 days later, in the palace gardens. She was with her new instructor, playing a simple melody on a portable keyboard set up outside. The music was far from perfect. Notes stumbled, rhythm uneven, but Charlotte was smiling. She saw Wright watching, waved. He waved back. That smile told him everything he needed to know. She was healing, slowly, but healing. 2 weeks later, Wright received a letter, Charlotte's handwriting, careful letters in blue ink. Dear Sergeant Wright, thank you for believing me when I didn't believe myself. Thank you for not walking away. Thank you for making my mum and dad listen. I'm doing better now. My new teacher is kind. She says mistakes are just learning that hasn't finished yet. I like that. I still get scared sometimes, still worry about being good enough. But my therapist says that's normal, that it will get better. I wanted you to know that you saved me. Maybe not from something big and dramatic, but from something that was killing me slowly, from thinking I didn't matter unless I was perfect. That's the biggest saving of all. Thank you. Charlotte. Wright kept that letter, locked in his desk. Never showed anyone. But on days when the job felt pointless, when ceremony and protocol seemed more important than people, he'd read it again, and remember why he'd chosen this career in the first place. 3 months later, the palace held its annual Christmas concert. Charlotte was scheduled to perform. Same Chopin nocturne she'd been struggling with during those dark days with Hartwell. Wright attended, off duty, in civilian clothes, sat in the back row. Charlotte walked onto the stage, poised, calm, not perfect, just herself. She sat at the piano, took a breath, and played. The performance wasn't flawless. A few notes stumbled, one phrase slightly rushed, but it was beautiful, genuine, full of feeling instead of fear. When she finished, the applause was warm, genuine. Charlotte stood, bowed, smiled, and for just a second, her eyes found Wright in the back row. A small nod of acknowledgement. "Thank you for being here." Wright nodded back. "You're welcome. You did great." After the concert, Catherine approached him in the hallway. "She wanted you to be here. Specifically, said it wouldn't feel complete without you." She did beautifully. She did. Not perfectly, but beautifully, and she's finally learning the difference. Catherine handed him a small gift box. "From Charlotte. She wanted you to have this." Wright opened it. Inside was a simple bookmark. Leather, hand-tooled, engraved with words in Charlotte's careful script. "Believing someone can change everything. Thank you for believing me. C." Wright's throat tightened. "Tell her I'll treasure it. Tell her yourself. She's been asking if you'll come to her next recital." "I'll be there." And he was, and the one after that, and the one after that. Not as her guard, as someone who'd stood up when it mattered, who'd chosen a child's safety over institutional comfort, who'd proven that sometimes breaking rules was the most important rule of all. Victoria Hartwell never taught again, quietly blacklisted from royal service, her reputation destroyed. Other families came forward over the following months. 7 children total. 7 children whose parents had thought they were alone, who'd been told to stay quiet, who'd believed nothing could change. But everything had changed, because one guard had listened, had believed, had acted. True duty isn't about following orders blindly. It's about knowing when rules matter less than doing what's right. It's about recognizing that the most important thing you can protect isn't property or protocol or institutional reputation. It's people, especially the ones who can't protect themselves. Charlotte learned to love music again, not because she had to, because she wanted to. She learned that mistakes don't make you worthless. They make you human. She learned that being perfect matters less than being brave enough to tell the truth when something's wrong. And she learned that sometimes the people meant to protect you will actually do it. Even when it's hard, even when it cost them something, even when every rule says to look the other way, because that's what real protection looks like. If this story showed you something about royal guards you didn't know, make sure you're subscribed. We share these untold stories from inside the palace every single day. Drop a comment. Would you have broken protocol to help a child in need, even if it meant risking your career? We'll see you in the next one.